is the first of our webinar series. Today is embracing AI ops to achieve operational intelligence. And the second one, which is on the 29th September next week, is around looking at the features and benefits of the Integration Operations Center. And then CSAS, what is it and why it should excite you? Then we've got bridging the paradigm, the old versus new. And we finalize everything with 21st century operations and compliance. On today's agenda, we're just going to give you a quick overview in terms of the market, what our challenges are, customer experiences, and then we'll look at IBM's point of view, and we'll go straight into the Q&A. So I'm Anthony Narty, I'm the CEO and founder of iMonitor. I'm going to be your host today and try and keep things lively and entertaining for you. We've got David Pridmore, our CTO of iMonitor, here as well, and David Metcalf, who's joined us from IBM, and he's a cloud and cognitive leader. So I thought I'd start off really by talking to you about, iMonitor in terms of, what we want to achieve in the marketplace. And I think it's fair to say that we're looking at creating insightful and actionable smart data as a strapline. And that really is about understanding the amount of data that we produce on a day-to-day basis, and understanding that you can end up with quite a lot of information, end up with information overload. And so therefore trying to make insightful decisions can be quite difficult. If you layer that on top of the fact that some of the data doesn't really tell you very much. Yes, there might be a problem, yes, there might be an issue, but really what does it relate to? And it's understanding how we can make that smart data into an actionable information for different people within an organization. And I guess the way that we look at bringing that all together is by integration of NOC and SOC. Today we're going to focus on how we make the NOC more intelligent. However, later on a number of the series will go through that in more detail. We do that in our iMonitor by building trust. And I think trust is important because if we're going to understand how to integrate the data and share information, then we need to prove to you, the customer, our ability and our skill. And the way we do that is by approaching it through our methodology. And that's really being able to sit down and do some design thinking workshops with you, and then spend some time in the organization and understand exactly what you're trying to achieve, align that with some of the challenges you have in the marketplace, and even looking at things like the competitors, what are they doing that's different? And also, if you are ahead, which we hope most of you are in terms of your, the competition, then it's how you do stay ahead. And then that methodology then will go through looking at the whole infrastructure design, looking at the topology and information flows, to be able to actually provide a solution that fits for you, and it's something that we would work hand in hand to deliver. And then lastly, what I think is very important, especially in today's marketplace, is a flexible engagement model. And so be it on-premise, in the cloud, or a hybrid cloud solution, or one that you may want to own and manage yourself, we can integrate as part of the team, and therefore we work in a flexible way with our clients. But look, it's enough from me. I've got the experts with me today, so let me hand over to David Pridmore, who's is very experienced in this area, and I see him as my confidant and my expert, and I think he'll take you through some of the experiences that he's had with a number of the global organizations that he's worked with.
Thanks, Tony. Yep. So I've been working in systems management for over 2 decades, but with the implementation of cloud technologies, software-defined infrastructure, systems are becoming more complex and dynamic. It means constant change, and there's more volume of information that can be processed by humans. So enter AI ops, the process of using technology to process that information and to automate the responses from that. What I wanted to do today was bring some learnings from our customers who are at various different stages of their AI ops journey, and just to highlight some key points that they've learned, that we can all learn from. The first is around monitoring. So enterprises have a lot of legacy monitoring, configuration processes, and they come with a lot of overhead. I've seen a big push to devolve the responsibility of that onto the teams that are actually the recipients of that data. What that does is free up the systems management and operations teams to focus on the bigger picture or the correlation or to drive more value from automation. So that's the first key takeaway that I want to sort of highlight today. The second is with the vast volumes of data, you know, it's tempting to try to capture everything. And we've seen customers who end up with hundreds of terabytes of data, massive storage costs, massive computation costs on top of that, and just too much data to do anything with. So the second key point to take away is that we need to reduce the amount of noise and focus on getting better data so that you can so we can use that better data to actually drive the AI ops. So it's very key for machine learning and these aspects that we have proper data. The next thing that companies are typically focusing on is increasing automation. As I mentioned at the start, there are huge volumes of information coming through now, and we can't just rely on people seeing an alarm, logging on, running an action themselves. It's just too slow, and it's not in keeping with the systems that we're implementing now. So what we're seeing here is first of all, companies trying to reduce the false alerting so that we can see the wood from the trees. Implementing dynamic thresholding, so the systems will learn what's normal and identify to us when it doesn't look normal, rather than people running around trying to change thresholds manually, which may not make sense the next week after they've been done. The next automation step is reducing triage time. So if you can automate the correlation of alarms or do root cause analysis, then you can focus people on the actual area that's causing an issue. It's quite common to have 5 different alarms which are related to 5 different issues, but there's just one root cause. We don't need 5 teams all running off. We should focus everyone on the actual issue itself. And the quicker that can be done, the quicker we can repair the issue, of course. Then focusing on well-known use cases is a good way to implement automation. So a good way to do that is to focus on standard operating procedures. The more they're standardized and known, the easier it is operations. You can move from a model where you start to semi-automate it by this is always the same actions to running a run book, and then proceed to full automation so that the system can just do everything itself, and the other guys can focus on things that they haven't seen before. But with that comes there's some technology issues around cross-domain communication. We want people to work not in silos, but as a team to focus on the issues that are most important. So implementing things like chat ops can help, creating a workspace where all teams can collaborate. And that may present challenges in terms of organization and the way things are structured. And the final point on the considerations is around having a constant feedback loop. It's most important to implement something that's achievable with good results. Feedback what was good, what wasn't, start again, and incrementally build up your approach to AI ops, rather than a big bang approach that tries to do everything and is likely to not do everything quite as well as you'd like it to. If we go on to the next slide, please, Tony. There's some organizational changes that are required to support the technology. One of these is baking in your monitoring from the start. Development standards should cover the monitoring, logging, and metrics, just making sure that the operations facility has the information that they want in a clean way that is relevant and isn't dependent on external teams to capture the information. The incident management process, obviously, I mean, most companies have a centralized incident management function, but companies are starting to think about implementing the concept of a site reliability engineer, who see the bigger picture and focus people on the important things to keeping things running. Other concepts are things like swarming, which came from the Japanese automotive industry, where you pull in lots of people from different places to focus on the most important issue that's service impacting. Another site reliability engineer concept is controlling the amount of change based on the performance of the system. So if it's consistently running, there's no issues, it's good. We want to implement change. We've got to keep the pace of change up with the competition, and that's good. If things start to fail, maybe reel back a bit on the new changes going in, and just keeping that flow, deciding how much the flow of change is released is quite key to keeping operation running. Then implementing the incremental automation thing, I think is really key. That we start with domains that are well known, that you've got good data for, that that are pretty much in hand when they're done by humans, so that you can give good feedback. You can start to implement machine learning models and automations that perform these actions, and easily compare them to the results from a human doing it. So you can increment that and gain some benefits, gain some tangible benefits as soon as possible, and then increment that and gain more and more tangible benefits. The incremental approach, I think, is really key to AI ops.
Dave, can I just ask? I was obviously, when you were talking, I was just thinking. You mentioned things like uptime. Obviously, yeah, uptime can mean different things to different people. So I was just wondering, would you be able to just elaborate a bit further, just so that we can just understand what you mean by that, I guess?
Yeah, I mean, uptime it still depends on the service and what the cost of the outage is. Some outages of some services are completely acceptable. They won't be seen by the customer. They don't have an impact on revenue or reputation. Some of them could cause irrevocable reputational or financial damage. It's important for that reason to provide context to the outage, and for people to understand what is this service, what's the impact of it, and so providing context to the outage really is key to deciding whether it is important or not.
And I guess that goes back to what I was alluding to at the beginning when I was talking about smart data. I think if you imagine that, I guess in financial services, you could have potentially a server that could be at risk, that's on a trading floor, and it could be trading, I don't know these days with the algorithms, but clearly tens of millions of pounds or dollars every hour or every minute. So, if there's a risk of something like that, then I guess it's being able to surface that up to, say, the CFO, because he would be interested in that, or even a CEO. But it doesn't just give it to him in gobbledygook that he wouldn't be able to interpret from an IT perspective. It will tell him from a business perspective, this system is at risk. And I guess that's what we're talking about, right?
Yeah, absolutely. You have to provide the right information to the right people with the right context. With cloud technologies, most systems are implemented with some deal of redundancy as well. In many cases, 90% of things can totally fail, but the system can still run. So the CFO will just be caring, is the money coming in? Is the system running? But he should be presented, definitely, if there's a chance of failure. And definitely the people who'll be fixing the issue should be presented that there's a potential failure, and they should be running around and doing that. But yeah, presenting the right information to the right people is key, and pulling in non-standard information into the model, I think, it's something that people are starting to do more and more. Financial data, sales metrics, weather, I think, all of these sort of things provide additional context to particular people to allow them to make their decisions.
Yeah, and David Metcalf, I saw you as you look like you're agitated to say something there. I don't know if there was something that you wanted to comment on that as well. I mean, we've mentioned financial services. Maybe it'll be good to give an example from another industry as well, that uptime is important, but perhaps in a different way than we would normally imagine.
Yeah, sure, Tony. I mean, the other one that really comes to mind is around the whole sort of retail experience, and the fact that people now, if their chosen website isn't responding as well as it should do, and they get something in their basket and they can't check out, then their attention span has gone from not a long time to virtually no time at the moment. So that always on from a retail perspective, and the ability to carry on shopping, if you can't sleep at 2 o'clock in the morning or whatever, needs to be there. And we're not just talking about a financial hit, although that's probably the biggest one, but we're also talking about brand reputation and things like that. And this ability to bring all this information that David was talking about, and I'll go into it a little bit later, is absolutely key to ensure that the shopper experience is the best it can be, so that there'll be returning customers or lifelong customers and all this sort of good stuff. So it's not just about keeping the lights on, it's creating the experience.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, and I guess the interesting thing. Sorry, Dave, I was talking over you. I guess anyone that knows me knows I can't keep quiet for very long, so I did quite well there for 20 seconds. I was just going to say that I guess when you were talking, I was thinking as well that we talk about these traditional industries, but let's not forget that things have converged, right? So a telecommunications operator could well have someone that's maybe trading or doing some mission critical work on their network, right? And then also someone could be shopping using their network, or even buying products from that telecommunications company. So they too have this challenge of making sure that, if people are relying on them to deliver an outcome for them, that they can actually deliver that outcome efficiently. So yeah, I mean, I was just adding that in because it does go across the whole spectrum. And I think the key for us is just understanding and working with our customers to work through that, I guess, change and the reduction of the complexity, in what they're delivering. So Dave Pridmore, I did interrupt you there. I know that you had, I think, one more point on your chart, which was an important one, because we are talking about AI. We are talking about artificial intelligence after all.
Just in terms of process, that organisations do need a process. They often, the existing processes are set up to deal with things after the fact. We've got an alarm, something's gone wrong, and the teams are used to seeing that alarm, going and fixing it. More and more, one of the first things that people are starting to implement is predictive insights. It's going to predict that an issue is coming. What we're seeing a lot in organisations is that they don't have appropriate procedures, that if you send that alarm to someone, they will say, okay, this is a potential problem, now we're going to look at it as an incident. So it's sort of like an incident management workflow, but people need to consider this, and it depends on how their organisation works. But often enterprises lack the processes to deal with all of the information that's coming out of the AI systems, especially along predictive insights. So that's the end of my my takeaways, or the 5 things I wanted to capture during this presentation. Tony, back to you.
Excellent, thank you, David. Sorry to put you both on the spot and get abuse from everybody in terms of time as well. But I just thought, sometimes some of these topics can be a bit hard to understand. So just trying to put it into context, I think makes it far simpler. So David Metcalf, that is, from IBM. Obviously, I've known you for a very long time, and we've had lots of good and sometimes heated debates and opinions on things. But one thing we've always shared is, I guess, a love for technology and how it can be applied within, I guess, any institution or organisation. I know that you've got some strong views on how people should be approaching this area of, artificial intelligence or AI. So I wonder if you could just share some of your thoughts with the clients on the line, just in terms of what you believe is probably the best place to start and things they need to consider.
Okay. Yeah, fine. So I've just got this one chart. I'm not going to go through it from a bullet by bullet perspective, you'll be pleased to know, but really I think what the first thing to do to draw out to people is the fact that AI ops shouldn't be seen as a person replacement. It's a supplementary capability. If you like, for me, it's the next kind of evolution in the IT service management capability that organizations will adopt. And as David was talking, this is going to be a gradual adoption. It's not going to be a big bang approach. But what it can be, from a discovery perspective, from that hidden insights piece, is you can start to look at it from a application by application perspective. So we've already spoken about the trading application within a financial services organization, or the shopping checkout piece from a retail perspective, or telco providers providing over the top capabilities and solutions. So we can get right down into the nuts and bolts of that application. So we could do it by prioritization of business critical applications. What that will then lead to is this connection of the dots that we come to in this middle portion of the slide here, which really is understanding that hybrid cloud now is very complex. In the old days, we were in a data center, you could physically walk up to a server and you'd understand where it was, what it was doing, the services it provided, and probably all the way down through into the communities that those services were being consumed by. You throw hybrid cloud now infrastructure into the mix, and you've got a mix of public, private, on-prem. You may be consuming services from other providers. You may be having your apps serviced by Salesforce or somebody like that. So life's got a little bit more complicated, and we need to connect all those dots together so that we can offer the services in a timely, performant and available manner that David was talking about previously. So that's the kind of the first two areas. The third area is providing a consistent and common interface, look and feel, call it what you will, single point of contact for all these teams now and these site reliability engineers, that due to what's happening in the world with COVID-19 and everything, may not be in a single place, could be distributed around different locations across the UK or globally. But they all need to have and to work off a consistent set of information. And this is where bringing all this data, whether it's structured or unstructured, together to give them the best chance of making sure that they, what we call the 3 R's really, they get the real-time insights, they get reduction of errors, and we reduce downtime. And those are the kind of 3 takeaways from an AI ops perspective that we're seeing when we're talking and working with customers today. So for me, it's an add-on into the kit bag for the IT ops, cloud ops guys and girls. It will become cultural from a perspective that the machine learning will allow the evolution of IT service management and this runbook capability that David spoke about. And we can actually start to resolve quicker and then report maybe after we've fixed the issue, because with the machine learning and the runbook automation and automations and things like that that can be invoked, we can actually do things much faster and more responsively than we could maybe today. So,
and yeah, sorry, David, I was going to say, I think one of the discussions I recall us having in terms of trying to work with clients and position this, and this is not 6 months ago, I'm talking about maybe a year, 2 years ago. I think the biggest takeaway I had, David, and I just wanted your comment on that, is around the people and the processes. I guess we're talking here about business. We're talking about the impact of even things like COVID at the moment, people working remotely, etc. But the real thing is, this isn't a product that you can just buy off the shelf, is it? And or rather, it's not a product you can buy off the shelf. And you can just put it in and it just works. And I guess that's why I come back to, how do you feel people should approach this in a much more succinct way?
Yeah,
that was my question. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. I think the fact is that most organisations have, from a kind of structured perspective, they're gathering events today. They've got topologies, they've got metrics, they've got tickets and logs and all that sort of good stuff. The machine learning aspect of it is the kind of the AI manager, if you like, which is IBM's roadmap for Netcool and the Netcool suite going forward, is bringing all that information that IBM's garnered over the years through their managed service accounts and has trained the AI manager on this, so that it isn't a big bang, certainly not, and it's a continuous learning capability, but it comes with a certain amount of knowledge. So it's, the return of investment isn't 2 years, 2.5 years or whatever. It's a couple of months, because we've put all that knowledge into the AI ops manager. And then when the organization starts to plug their specific organizational information in it to supplement those, then that's where the benefits start to come out around, especially from an incident management perspective, where if we can reduce incident management, then the knock-on effect is through reduction of downtime. We can enhance our service desk and our service capabilities, which all add on to availability, performance, and all that sort of good stuff.
Excellent. Thank you, David. That was fantastic. Thank you for your insights and sharing with us some of your experiences. Just like to add that we're running a little bit over, so I hope most of you can stay with us. I think the discussion has been very compelling, so we'll just obviously continue to the next slide, if I can get my technology working. So so I think, let's just summarize what the type of things that we've discussed today. So I think, some of the key takeaways is smart data. I think we've talked about that, and the ability to make decisions with the information that's given, that's relative to the business, rather than it being something that's more IT speak. That lends itself to be a lot more efficient and avoid potential outages or challenges. And then also just reducing the complexity is pretty key, because you also want to feel that the environment that you work in, or that you run and that you support, it can be seen as simple. Of course, there's lots of things going on in the background, but I think reducing that's key. And one of the things that we're driving towards is integrating a NOC and a SOC, and we term that integrated operations center. It's something that's new, and we're going to talk about that at our next webinar series next week. And then the other thing we talked about is monitoring. So it's really being understanding that every organization that provides a service or that you log into, there's an element of monitoring that's going on there in the whole environment, and you need to have access to every single part of the infrastructure that creates the service. And then reduce noise, and that's just making sure that you focus in on the things that are most important to an organization, and not sift through hundreds of thousands, or in some cases millions of events or data. And AI helps to bring that down. And I think as both Daves actually mentioned it quite a lot in terms of automating a number of different processes. But of course, before you automate a process, you need to make sure that process works efficiently, and can be monitored and managed. And then continuous feedback, which means understanding how people are feeling about the solution, you know, maybe it's your customers or users, and then being able to continuously innovate and keep ahead of the competition. And then the last four really was just around AI ops. It's not about replacing human beings. We hear that a lot. I think if you can more look at it as giving you more time to be proactive, not reactive, then actually you come out with great ideas. You know, a lot of the ideas that organizations have come up with, there's no surprise that most of them have probably smaller teams, but they outsource a lot, or they use bleeding edge technology, and that allows them the time to think and focus on their business and not become a big IT company. Data again, we talked about cleaning the data. It's extremely key, making sure that it's accurate and there's one version of that. And that all lends itself to an evolution of what we see as, you know, the service management. It's changing, and I think we all understand that change comes, but sometimes we're hesitant to accept that change, and we believe that it's better to embrace that change and own it, and therefore you understand it, and then it can add value. So yeah, it really is an enabler for us when we look at how we can integrate the NOC and the SOC, because you really are then taking on quite a lot of information and a lot of complexity. So just moving on, I know that we do have our, we're going to go to a Q&A now. I think even the person wants to join in. He's heard that there's a great webinar going on. So let me just move to the Q&A. I said at the beginning, make sure that if you've got any questions, you send it to all of us so that we can read it. So here, let me go to the first one. The first question is, what are the most common pitfalls when introducing AI ops? Now, who wants to answer that one?
I'll take that one, Tony.
Okay.
So, yeah, I'd say not having the appropriate procedures to deal with it, both to implement it and to deal with the outcomes that are delivered by AI ops. They're common pitfalls. Collecting too much data. I mentioned when I was going through my slides, sometimes you want, essentially at the end of the day, you want your AI ops project to drive cost efficiencies. Storing petabytes of data and having whole server farms to deal with it isn't going to increase your financial efficiency, certainly, because it's really about siloing in on particular things. And I think trying to do too much at once really is another key one. You just need to focus on things that you know quite well, and incrementally proving what you're doing and having constant feedback. I think those are the feedback, the pitfalls in my mind.
Sorry, I'm still on mute there. Thank you, Dave. I hope that answers your question. Obviously, if you want some more information or we can talk about it in more detail, then we can set up a meeting and do that. The other question I have is, will AI ops speed the convergence of NOC SOC functions similar to what we are seeing from a DevOps perspective, as we hear more and more about DevSecOps? Maybe Dave Metcalf, do you want to answer that one?
Yeah, sure. I actually believe that AI ops will be the enabler. If you're looking now at a consistent set of IT and business data that is being brought together and, as we've said, you know, collected, cleansed and made available, then why wouldn't you have that data available to everybody instead of having it in silos from a network and a security perspective? So I actually, you know, we had a lot of good conversations and a go at doing this 5 or 6 years ago to a lot of clients, and it really didn't take off for several reasons. I think the primary reason was that you know, data was king and people were quite reticent to kind of share it. I think now the world's moved on. They realise that data still is king. Knowledge is power, but that knowledge should be throughout the enterprise, and everybody should be, to use a good old English phrase, singing off the same hymn sheet. So I believe that AI ops is probably, the top of the pyramid, and then that pyramid can branch down into the NOC and the SOC, and then bring it all together again. So yes.
Yeah, okay. And I guess anything I'd add to that is, if you think as well about the fact that organizations as well have maybe two teams. One is sometimes termed as the legacy team, or that deal with the on-premise type solutions, and a whole new team that they, maybe the digital team that are focused on delivering applications or services through the cloud. And it's bringing those teams together, bringing the information together, because you can end up in a situation you're duplicating information both on-premise and in the cloud, because your customers that are using your service, potentially each person may have 3 or 4 different devices. And then you get into the challenges of managing people's identification, so that, if you have a threat on-premise and you deal with that, how do you then ensure that you transfer the same remediation to your cloud solution? And often you see organizations get burnt by not understanding that, you potentially have got 2 separate areas. So I won't keep going on, because I know that we've run out of time. So I appreciate it if you're still here. Clearly, it's very interesting. The other question was, what are the best first steps to take towards AI ops?
I should probably take that one then. It's my turn. Yeah, I think first of all, firming up the existing processes is pretty key. Then focusing on data, focusing on a set of data and a specific problem that that you can solve, that you can have metrics or some evaluation to make sure that you are solving it appropriately. And then automation, focusing on automating. Again, a subset, something that is achievable, that you can feed back, that you can analyze and check that it is working. I think they'd be the first steps that I would take.
Great, thank you, David, for that. Let's just take one last question. The last one is, how will AI ops change current and future job roles in IT operations support? That's an interesting one.
Yeah, I'll take that one.
Okay.
So I think everybody's on the call is probably mindful now that it is all about the data. So from my perspective, I think what we'll see now is more of a kind of crossover from a analyst and an operations perspective. So a fusing or a coming together of data analysis roles and IT operations roles, because one's reliant on the other. And when you were talking about the first steps and everything, and talking about the gathering of the data, you need to normalize it, clean it, and then you need to understand what sort of algorithms and that you're going to apply to get the results that you want. So that's probably in the data analyst domain. But then how you apply that across incident management, for example, or problem or capacity planning and all that sort of stuff, is where the traditional ITIL processes and the IT cloud operations people come in. So I think that's where the crossovers will be, which is genuinely exciting. If I was a young IT ops guy, I'd be, being quite excited about the fact to work with a lot of data and get into data analytics and analysis, as well as just, the IT functions.
Yeah, the only other thing I would add to that as well is that when you talk about the integrated NOC and SOC, you are talking about 2 completely different skill sets and experience, and even access to confidential data and information. So it could be the time where, the people in that integrated operations center are going to get paid more, right? And they're going to have to be more, they're going to have to gain more experience and have a better knowledge of all the information that's flowing to be able to act on it quicker. So yeah, I mean, I think it's an exciting time. There's very, very few times that IT changes and converges in this way. And I think if we can go along a trajectory that we have in the past, then yeah, it's a really exciting time. And I think, you know, people will be chomping at the bit to get to understand this whole new world. So look, we've definitely run over now, so I need to wrap up. So I just want to take this opportunity to just remind you that we do have another webinar that's coming up on Tuesday, the 29th of September at 2 o'clock London time. And that we're going to talk about what the benefits of the IOC is. So I've mentioned that acronym, and so please try and attend, and then we can go into a bit more detail. And of course, throughout the rest of the webinars, we will pick different areas of the whole of the integration, NOC and SOC, and go into detail. So this, you know, we kind of talked about AI ops. The next thing we're going to do is really talk about what you need to consider when doing the integration. So I hope you can join us. And I just want to say thank you everyone that attended. It's a big thank you to all the speakers, and Dave, CTO, and Dave Metcalf. I know that, yeah, none of you know, Dave flew in from Portugal yesterday, and I believe he's now in quarantine, and he stayed awake, and he probably doesn't have any food at home because people are stockpiling already, I hear. So thank you very much, David, for that. And you can probably, you know, try and get someone to deliver you some food. I probably could do it now because you know, you came on my webinar, so just let me know if you need anything. But yeah, for everybody else, thank you very much. Have a great day, or sleep tight, as it could be the evening where you are. And I look forward to speaking to you again next week. Thank you.